Hey guys, thank you for checking out the video. My name is G and you're watching Keeping This Tech. And in today's video, we're gonna take a look at the A7C. Now this camera was launched last week, at least at the time of this recording. The dust has settled some bit and I have had some time to think about this camera. And well, I have some thoughts. Honestly, I think if you're looking at this camera from the A7 III perspective, you're a little disappointed. However, if you're looking at this camera from the perspective of, say, that of a 6600 shooter or an A6000 shooter, then this camera looks really, really good. Because for all intents and purposes, I mean, functionality-wise, these cameras are almost exactly the same. These cameras are the same. Both of these cameras are gonna have Sony's real-time tracking, so you're gonna get the eye detection for animals and humans and stills. These cameras are the same. They both have USB port, HDMI port, microphone jack, headphone jack. They share the same battery. Now they share the same EVF. These cameras are the same. These cameras are the same. They share the same maximum shutter speed. What else? Yes, there's a difference between it being full frame and a crop sensor, but man, I can't think of any other camera that is so closely paired and matched. And for that reason, if you're coming from a camera like the A6600, the A7C is an amazing upgrade. Right after this. All right, guys, so let's get into it. The A7C. To say this camera has received mixed reviews or reception is a bit of an understatement. In fact, really the initial reaction to this camera has been pretty negative. And I understand that sentiment, and that's coming from a lot of Sony shooters who actually have the A7 III or other Sony Alpha cameras who've been using the system for a while. They're a bit like, not impressed with this camera because technically they've had this camera before. And not to mention, this camera's coming off of the heels of the widely received and appreciated A7S III. So when you're looking at that camera, you're like, man, Sony can do all of that. And it's like, now they're just giving us this. It just feels, you feel some type of way. So I understand that sentiment. And I guess if you're looking at this and you're not really used to Sony cameras and, this is a very brand new thing to you, you're like, wait a minute, I've heard nothing but great things about the A7 III. Why is the A7C getting all this hate? If it's based off of the A7 III, that doesn't make any sense. Well, hopefully that helps answer the question. These are existing Sony shooters like myself who are disappointed in this camera. But this video is not about that. We're not talking about A7 III, A7C, no. We're looking at this camera from the A6600 perspective, or really any A6000 camera for that matter. I'm obviously gonna compare it with the A6600 because I feel like these are closely paired, or rather I should say closely matched in specs and things like that. So you must be asking yourself, how are these cameras the same if one's a crop censored camera and one's a full frame camera? Well, they're the same functionality wise in what you're gonna get. Like, so for instance, these cameras both give you 24 megapixels. In relation to their sensor, they all have edge-to-edge coverage for autofocusing points. Both of these cameras are gonna have Sony's real-time tracking, so you're gonna get the eye detection for animals and humans and stills, and eye detection in video. They both have front-facing displays. I hope I said that right. Front-facing? They both have a front-facing displays. There you go. They both have all the ports that you need to get this going. So USB port, HDMI port, microphone jack, headphone jack. They share the same battery. Now they share the same EVF. They share the same maximum shutter speed. What else? They share the fact that they both have a single card slot. They share the same aesthetics. I'm bringing that up to say some of the negative reception that this camera's received when you compare it to the A7 III is the fact that it doesn't have a front-facing dial, it's missing a joystick, it's lacking custom buttons, ergonomics and handling that a lot of professionals have become used to. It works. I mean, I use it myself and I love it on my A7 III. But again, coming from an A6000 camera, you don't have any of these things. You don't have the front-facing dial, so you're not gonna be missing it. You don't have a joystick in the back, and again, you're not gonna be missing it. I think if you are coming from the A6600, you are gonna be losing out on these custom buttons, but you're gaining other things too, so it becomes a wash. And it's true that if you have real-time tracking, you are relying less on having to move your autofocus points a lot more because you can just half press your shutter button and your subject is in focus and they're being tracked while you take the photo or even while you wait to take the right shot. So there's that. So yeah, these cameras handle, they feel, they look, they behave the same. So now let's talk about the upgrades that are available if I were to upgrade from the A6600 to the A7C or any other A6000 camera to the A7C. First things first is I'm going to use, and I plan to use this camera the exact same way that I'm currently using it now. And right now my A6600 is primarily my family camera. It's the camera that I take all the pictures of my kids with, or when I'm out casually shooting, this is the camera that I'm using. So I'm not really concerned with having a professional feel and having all the buttons and ergonomics that I need, because this is just kind of like my fun camera. Now, that being said, I do think I'm going to absolutely appreciate the fact that this new A7C has a UHS 2 card slot. As I'm taking these burst shots of my kids, they're gonna clear off the card faster, and that allow me to capture that next moment. And I know that sounds corny to some people, but that's a really big deal to me. And yes, I'm gonna absolutely appreciate that. The other benefit is now this is gonna have a USB-C instead of a micro USB-A port like this has. So I think that'll be good. It'll be great for fast transferring and hopefully fast charging if it's USB-C. I know there's fast charging on the other camera, so hopefully that'll be there. There's also improved wireless connectivity, so being able to transfer the photos quicker to, say, my phone or my iPad from the camera. I'm gonna definitely take advantage of that. And I think the biggest deal for me, and hands down, this has me thinking about this camera more than ever. This is it. You guys ready? I'm gonna tell you right now. It's the image sensor. Now, wait a minute. You mean it's full frame? Well, no, not really. A full frame is obviously a given, but the image sensor is from the A7 III on the A7C versus the image sensor that's found on the A6600. That is from the A6000. So you're looking at an image sensor that's from like 6 years ago, and probably even more than that by the time, you know, the A7C starts shipping and all that other stuff, and we go into 2020 and beyond. This is an old image sensor. Now, here's the thing. It's great for photos. I mean, I pair my A6600, A6400 with this lens, this 10-18 for real estate. The image look amazing. You put your Sigma 30 1.4, Sigma 16, you're taking pictures with this camera, the A6600, they look great. So it actually says a lot that that camera, or I should say that the image sensor is held up for this long. But when we're talking about video, man, rolling shutter is a problem. Rolling shutter, in case you don't know, is when you see a straight line and it gets all wavy. The A6600 and A6400's video is super warpy if you're moving around the camera. This is why I don't use it on a gimbal, or I don't use it handheld moving around. It's always on a tripod when I'm using it for video. And don't get me wrong, the A7 III's rolling shutter isn't the greatest in the world, but it is way better than that on the A6600 or A6400 for that matter. And that is going to be a huge plus. In fact, I'll probably be able to use my A7C, if I get one, way more for video than I currently use my A6000 cameras, or at least the way that I use them for video will be a lot more improved and appreciated. So I'm excited for that. Now, the fact that this is a full frame sensor, of course, it goes without saying, low light performance is going to be better, but the fact that it's a Sony backside illuminated sensor, whew, that's just a cherry on top. So yeah, across the board, this is going to be an improved experience for everyone that's looking to upgrade from an APS-C Sony camera. There are some other things to really consider though, because if we're talking about lenses, then this camera is not going to really be compact if you're putting full frame lenses on them. And that's kind of some of the pushback that Sony received, is that this camera is being sold as a compact camera, and it is if you're going to be using only that kit lens that they developed for this camera, that, by the way, is only at its smallest state when it's not usable, because you have to twist it for it to actually turn to activate so you can start using it at 28 millimeters. If you're going to use any other full frame lens on your A7C, it's going to be bigger than what they're advertising it to be. So you just got to know what you're getting into. A prime example of that is this Tamron 17 to 28. This right here is one of the lightest lenses that you can get for your full frame camera. It's an ultra wide angle zoom. It actually only zooms in internally. So as you're going from 17 to 28, there's no extension of the lens. This is light, compact, portable, at least for full frame standards. And now if you have it on something that looks similar to this, you're seeing something that is just way bigger than it would be if you were using, say, something like this 10 to 18, right? So that's the thing. I mean, this has a smaller profile. It's absolutely lighter than this Tamron 17 to 28. The other disadvantage is that, hey, when you put a full frame lens on a crop censored body, it punches in and you're able to get that, field of view almost 1.5 times that. So an example would be if I'm putting an 85mm lens on a crop censored body like this, the focal range is going to be effectively 127mm, which is great because it gives me almost, another lens that I would have had to pay money for just because it was on this body. The focal range is different, but it's at 24 megapixels when I take that shot. However, if I were to do the same thing on a full frame body, which I can, it's called Super 35 mode, where it kind of crops into where it would be if it were a crop censored camera, I can still get that effective field of view, that 127mm, but if I'm taking pictures, that'll now be 10 megapixels instead of 24 megapixels. And so you have to decide whether or not that's important for you, because otherwise you need to get an equivalent lens, and that would be 135mm, which, by the way, is way bigger than a Sony 85 1.8. Now, all of this is different for video because it doesn't make a difference. You don't lose any quality, but for stills, that's a thing. So lenses are really like the bigger deal here, and it has to be worth a strong consideration if you're moving in, because it's more than just the body, depending on the type of user you are. Now, again, for me, I've actually been making an effort to purchase full frame lenses since last year, so I'm pretty much all set. I'm gonna go ahead and continue to use my Sigma lenses for video so they can stick around, and I'll just use my 35 1.8 the same way I would have used my Sigma 31.4 on this APS-C body, but now on the A7C if I ended up getting it. And I guess the last thing that I'm gonna say about this, and this is just a personal thing for me, there's no way I'm gonna spend $1,800 on this A7C. I just can't. It doesn't make sense for me because I kind of fall back into that existing A7 III user mindset, and I think to myself, it's not worth it. However, if this thing drops down in price for a sale, a holiday sale, or whatever special that might be going on for that period of time, I'm probably gonna hop on it, and I think it'll be a great upgrade then. So guys, thank you for watching. I'd love to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll check you guys out in the next one. Peace.